Welcome everyone, and I am so happy to see this great turnout, notwithstanding rain, notwithstanding COVID. I'm sure that many of you share my feelings of joy in being able to see people in 3 dimensions, in person, not just through a flat screen. I will say, having been through a year and a half of Zoom gala events or court hearings, etc., that it was a little bit difficult to find the bottom half of my suit as I was getting ready for this. I'm not the only one, I can tell. So, we're very pleased that everyone turned out, and I want to say that returning here to New York is a special treat for Tamar and me and our daughter Gala, who is here today, because we live in Chicago. Well, Gala lives in Connecticut now, where we have our own good-sized population of Czech and Slovak Americans, and we have many Czech landmarks there. A street named Cicero, a street named Cermak, rather, after the mayor, and a neighborhood called Pilsen. But this beautiful Bohemian National Hall always takes me back to Prague. I mean, look around at it. It reminds me of the buildings in which we lived and worked when I was privileged to serve there as the U.S. ambassador not so long ago. So we have an extraordinary evening ahead. It's very tightly organized to get us all home in time, and filled with reminders of why we gather to celebrate human rights, the power of the powerless through writing and dissent, and through political leadership. Together, the hallmarks of the life of Vaclav Havel, who left us 10 years ago this December. And as we look at the world today, from Belarus to Venezuela to a bridge over the Rio Grande, we might wonder what Havel would make of the choices and progress or lack of progress that we've made in these past 10 years. But we certainly can see how his vision of civil society remains vital, and why we're obliged to stand up for our fellow human beings who live under unforgiving regimes or in difficult circumstances, and why we bear a responsibility to make our planet more humane and more livable, both through action and through art. So we explore these themes at the Václav Havel Library Foundation year-round under the extraordinary leadership of our executive director, Pavla Nikovla. Pavla has been a tireless and innovative organizer of events that focus on Havel's life and legacy, including contemporary plays and literature, politics and diplomacy, attracting growing audiences here in New York and from around the world via Zoom. And tomorrow, she will be sworn in as an American citizen. USA. She is responsible for the great programming we have, and if you haven't signed up yet for our calendar of events, please do so and try out some of our programs. To guide us this evening, I'm excited to introduce one of Broadway's most celebrated actors. Recounting Christine Baranski's remarkable stage and screen biography would take us through dessert, so some highlights we'll have to do. She won a Tony for her performance as Chris Gorman in Neil Simon's Rumors. She won an Emmy as Sybil Shepherd's hard-drinking friend Marianne in the CBS sitcom Sybil. She made all of us laugh out loud in her recurring role as Dr. Beverly Hofstadter, Leonard's hyper-analytical mother on The Big Bang Theory. Near and dear to my heart, she has played a tough, liberal Chicago lawyer, first in The Good Wife, and now as the star of its hugely popular spin-off, The Good Fight. But, most significant for our purposes, Christine portrayed Charlotte in the original Broadway cast of The Real Thing by tonight's honoree, Sir Tom Stoppard. That performance garnered her her first Tony Award. That's a nice thing to be able to say. Well, my first Tony Award. And gave rise to a friendship with Sir Tom that endures to this day. She is the real thing. She does fight the good fight. So please give a warm welcome to the one and only Christine Baranski.
Dobry wieczór. Dziękuję bardzo. And thank you, Andy, for that effusive, my goodness, lovely introduction. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is such a great pleasure to be here this evening. I worked in this building, the Manhattan Theater Club. Downstairs, I did several plays here. I know this neighborhood, and I live a block away, so this was very convenient for me. Indeed, I had the honor of working with Sir Tom Stoppard in his Tony Award-winning play back in 1983. I have often referred to the experience as one of the high points in my life and my career. Reading Hermione Lee's marvelous recent bio of Tom confirms that he is one of our most brilliant as well as one of our most respected and beloved writers. So I would do anything for Tom Stoppard, and I am here at his bidding. Indeed, I grew up in the Polish-American community of Buffalo, and Polish was spoken fluently by my parents and my grandparents. So ja jestem polska dziewczynka, but alas, no rozumiesz po polsku. However, I think Tom assumes I'm undaunted by multiple consonants and will manage to pronounce the names of our distinguished guests. That, of course, remains to be seen and heard. But because Sir Tom is, in his bio, compared me to a thoroughbred racehorse, I think he assumes I can keep the evening moving at a galloping pace. That also remains to be seen. But ladies and gentlemen, here we are, we're off. So who is with us tonight? In addition to Ambassador Schapiro and his wife, Tamar Neuberger, we have several other diplomats in attendance. Czech Foreign Minister Jakub Kulhanek, who will say a few words. Former American Ambassador to the Czech Republic, Craig Stapleton, and his wife, Debbie Stapleton, who are a diplomatic couple and past recipient of the Award for Unparalleled Service to the Czech and Slovak Communities. We will present that award again tonight. Maria Shatardova, the Czech Ambassador to the United Nations, and her husband, Benoit Shatar. Hinek Kmoniček, the Czech Ambassador to the United States. Arnoš Kareš, Consul General of the Czech Republic, and his wife, Jitka Karešova. And the Slovak Consul General, Milan Vrbovsky. And the first recipient of the Foundation's Disturbing the Peace Award, Matida of Myanmar, who is in the United States now after the Havel Library Foundation enabled her safe departure from her home country during the military's crackdown on dissent this spring. Several generous individuals have made significant donations to make this evening's event possible, and we thank them. Craig and Dorothy Stapleton, Madeleine Albright, Andrew Schapiro and Tamar Neuberger, Jack and Patty Stack, Michaela and Zdenek Bakala, Joseph Ballard, Pavel and Kimberly Oliva, Lisa Stone, Stephen Hines, Tammy Westergaard, and Elizabeth Ryans. Next, I would like to introduce, excuse me, I'm getting a signal. We have an unscheduled visitor coming in via video. I think we should take a look. It is indeed pretty late in London for Sir Tom Stoppard. Hello, Tom.
And I'm going to say dobry večer is all I can say.
We miss having you here, but we'll take you in pixelated form anyway. You look good in pixels.
But you're all beautiful. What a lovely sight. Thank you all. Thank you especially, Christine.
Oh, my pleasure. I would do anything for you, Tom. I wish you were here, and we look forward to seeing, hopefully we'll see Leopoldstadt in New York, because you're so loved in this country, and particularly in New York City. And you have a lot of actors here tonight who are also former colleagues of yours and who love you and adore you, so there you are.
Very, very, very touched. I feel honored and over-honored, but I'm not complaining. I think it's lovely.
Tom, is the bottom half of you dressed in pajamas? It's an impertinent question, but really it could be. It's none of my business, of course.
Stand up.
I dare you. Well, we are going to continue with the program, Sir Tom, so you can maybe get some shut-eye. I don't know, it's very lovely of you to stay up this late to be with us, even on Zoom.
I'll keep in spiritual touch with you all. See you later.
Bye, Tom.
Thank you.
Oh gosh, even talking to him on Zoom is intimidating and wonderful. And anyone who knows Tom knows that he's such a marvelously human individual and so gracious, and yet he's just got to be one of the most brilliant people you've ever met. So it's, he never makes an issue of his brilliance, only his humanity. But anyway, as I started to say, we actually do have someone in person, an incredibly talented young playwright who also writes acclaimed novels and screenplays and serves as president of PEN America. I last spent an evening with Ayad Akhtar and with Tom Stoppard just before the pandemic closed everything down in New York. This was at PEN America's Literary Awards dinner. Many of you know Ayad's Pulitzer Prize winning play Disgraced, about how a perfectly nice small dinner party can end incredibly badly. Beyond the Pulitzer, he has won numerous awards for that play and for others. 2 Obies, the Edward M. Kennedy Prize for Drama, the John Gassner Award, the Steinberg Playwright Award, and, in fact, Ayad has just been named as state author by the New York Writers Institute and will formally accept the designation in Albany on Friday, September 24th. That's very soon. Well, tonight we have asked him to add to our understanding of how theater and literature are connected to human rights and free speech. Let us welcome Ayad Akhtar.
I want to thank the Library Foundation for the opportunity to address you all this evening on the occasion of this gala and this award to Tom Stoppard. Vaclav Havel's legacy, first a man of the theater, a political dissident and then prisoner, and finally a president, well, it's a trajectory that, at least in its third act, is unusual. And yet, playwrights have always understood a few things about politics and power, their effect on the psyche, their merciless exigencies, the way they shape and are shaped by history. Indeed, what is more deeply political, in the original sense of the word polis, the city, than citizens speaking to citizens, the stage and house a distillation of the circumstance of the city, the encounter between the people and their representations of power. Our best playwrights, from Shakespeare to Ibsen, Shaw to Miller, Brecht to Stoppard, all of them have not only articulated the deeper patterns in our polities, but crafted the language through which our collective conscience, our politics, makes sense of itself. Indeed, the bard's deepest reflections on the political inform the history of grand strategy, among the finest, most enduring reflections on politics and power that our story-hungry species has ever known. The political, then, in its deepest sense, I might argue, is the essence of the theater. the archetypal birthright of the stage, however modestly we now here avail or fail to of its possibilities. On this celebration of Havel and his legacy and the Foundation's work, I want to say a few words on freedom. It may be hard for some of us to understand just what it might mean to fight for one's freedom in the sense that Havel and his generation did, even if we here now are in solidarity. We know those to be oppressed by state power. Even so, we may not ourselves, meaning those of us in this room, we may not be able to imagine the nature of this struggle, its texture and immediacy. Many of us are not coerced by governing authorities to accept a version of reality that does not accord with our own. And most of us are certainly not imprisoned with prison or threatened with prison or death if we fail to toe the proverbial party line. But let me suggest that this matter of freedom cannot be defined by punishment alone. The truth is, we are always, all of us, dependent on and implicated in the state of our collective political freedom. In following Havel's own articulation of his generation's dilemma of having to live the lie of the regime, it would be hard not to recognize the threats of the lies we too are being forced to contend with in our present day. And I am not just talking here about the so-called big lie casting its noxious shadow on our national political life. No, I am also referring to the deformation of reality our manifold outrages are unleashing upon us from all quarters. Besieged by a seemingly ubiquitous lust for unreality, we, like characters in Havel plays, are increasingly beset by ideology. Indeed, ideologies, now passionate, now canny, are in ascendance everywhere. One thing is certain: it will be up to us to figure out what we want to do about it. Until then, we can only hope that perhaps an artist of Havel's mettle and humor and clear-eyed vision will rise amongst us and play a part in helping us see more clearly and be more bravely. Thank you.
However, we're going to move the evening along, and we are back for this year's presentation of the Disturbing the Peace Award to a courageous writer at risk. This award from the Vaclav Havel Library Foundation borrows its title from the book based on Havel's conversations with a journalist. In it, Havel reflects on his life and efforts to reinvigorate Czech society with greater moral and civic responsibility after the Soviet invasion in 1968. Tonight, to present this prestigious award, now in its 6th year, and with a cash prize of $5,000, let us turn to one of Havel's closest friends, Adam Michnik, the Polish historian, essayist, journalist, who himself was imprisoned for anti-communist dissent. Michnik continues to serve as editor of the important newspaper, Gazeta Wyborcza, a job given to him by Lech Walesa. He received the French Legion of Honor and numerous other awards for his own writing and his bravery. Adam Michnik could not be here tonight due to travel restrictions, so Elżbieta Matinia will present the award on his behalf. Elżbieta is professor of sociology and liberal studies at the New School for Social Research and in New York, and distinguished author of An Uncanny Era, a book of post-revolutionary conversations between Vaclav Havel and Adam Michnik. To read the acceptance speech by Dmitry Strotsev, who unfortunately could not be with us tonight as he is in Prague for a month-long literary residency, we ask Olga Levina. Olga is the co-founder and artistic director of Jersey City Theater Center. An accomplished dancer, actor, and choreographer, Olga graduated from Mintz School of the Performing Arts. Welcome, Elżbieta, welcome, Olga.
I'm Elżbieta Matynia, a friend of Adam Michnik and sometimes a collaborator. What I am this evening is a really poor substitute, as it seems that pandemic red tape, necessary perhaps, had prevented our main guests in honor from taking part. So Adam has been reduced to asking me to read aloud a few words for you. Adam begins with an excerpt from a letter by the great writer Bohemian Havel to a young American student. Dear Miss April, on the way Mr. Havel became the new president of this republic of ours, when enthusiasm overflowed so much that stream of tears swelled Vltava waters, I walked around the Royal Road, which was so plastered with writing that no fragment of wall and no patch of storefront windows were left bare. And the resounding emotions and gestures of students expressed the desire that a man as young, almost as young as they were, should be president. A man who was the measure not only of our political life, but also the measure of the world. And then Adam himself continues, indeed Havel was then, at the end of 1989, at the beginning of 1990, the indisputable leader of the Velvet Revolution. He was worshipped. At the backstage of the theater, an eminent professor is said to have told him that he was greater than God. His candidacy for the presidency was supported by the street, by the organizations that came out of the democratic opposition circles, by all official institutions, the Women's League, and even the Czech People's Army. All members of the parliament voted for him, even those who, as Havel would later recall, only a few weeks later, had loudly approved my prosecution and imprisonment. Well, this writer, dissident, and political prisoner became the face of the new Czechoslovakia and the star of international media. Later on, he wrote after many years, Havel wrote after many years, I had to pay a high price for that adulation. In the 1990s, he recalled, well, I was constantly shadowed. There were interrogations, the local authorities plotted against me. I was under house arrest several times, and this was made me more piquant about insults and threats. Unknown perpetrators broke into our dwelling and vandalizing, or they did all sorts of damage to my car. It was an exciting time, though, with attacks by police escaping from shadows, crawling through the woods, hiding out in the flats of co-conspirators, house searches, and dramatic moments when important documents were eaten. It was also at that time that we had meetings with the Polish dissidents on our common border. And Adam says, notorious anti-hiker Havel was compelled to walk to the summit of Śnieżka 5 times, that's a mountain on the border. But there was a reward. He was able to meet and establish permanent friendship with Jacek and myself and other members of CORE, the Polish Workers' Defense Committee, and this was where he conceived his brilliant essay, The Power of the Powerless. And so, it was there on Mount Śnieżka in the summer of 1978, on the 10th anniversary of the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, that my personal adventure with Vaclav Havel began. At one point, he said that a dissident is like Sisyphus, someone who pushes the stone up the mountain, even though he knows the chances of reaching the top are next to nothing, but who nonetheless has to keep pushing in order to be at pace with himself and give his life meaning. During the dark times of normalization after 1968 Soviet invasion, the philosopher Jan Patočka, who was an intellectual mentor and moral authority for Czech dissidents and who was beloved figure and thinker of my students and the students of research, I have to say, So Patočka wrote, at present, the intellectual has three possible ways of proceeding. Internal emigration, like Plato, the path of compromise, like the sophists, or like Socrates, consistent living in truth, conflict with the authorities, and death. And in this essay about Tomáš Masaryk, the first president of Czechoslovakia, Patočka wrote, for the most part, philosophers constructed an ideal state, but in all of history, its realization by means of actual political action was given to only one thinker, namely Masaryk. Well, Patočka was no longer with us when Havel made a second such attempt. Like Socrates, he chose the path of uncompromising conflict with the authorities. But unexpectedly, by coincidence, Socrates became Pericles. In December 1989, Havel was elected president of Czechoslovakia. A writer and a citizen, Václav Havel was an iconic figure among those intellectual and artistic communities in Central and Eastern Europe that contested the surrounding world of dictatorship, doublespeak, and fiction. Havel had an acute sense of intellectual and civic obligation. Freedom and truth are what he defended as a writer and what permeated his inner life as a citizen. We know that this way of living, firmly entrenched in the European and American tradition, was also led by such masters as Jonathan Swift and George Orwell, Victor Hugo and Albert Camus, Sandor Petrofi and Istvan Bibo, Adam Mickiewicz and Czesław Miłosz, Alexander Herzen and Peter Chadaev, Tomasz Węclaw, Wasyl Bykov and Russell Sus. These are now joined by the extraordinary Belarusian poet, political prisoner Dmitry Strotsev, wisely honored by the Václav Havel. Belarusian society's rebellion against the election fraud by Alexander Lukashenko, a tyrant who clings to power thanks only to the support of Vladimir Putin, came as a sign of hope that it is possible to make the world a better place and to defend human dignity against despotism and subjugation. The award bestowed upon Dmitry Strotsev, author of the insightful and unsettling poetic epos Belarus Overturned, is of great significance for people in our part of the world, and it reflects a concern for the values of a humanistic culture that today faces threat from populism, xenophobia, and homophobia, those nasty manifestations of contemporary totalitarianism. May this year's Disturbing the Peace Award to a courageous writer serve the cause of freedom in Belarus and the freedom of a people in an independent Belarusian state. It offers a beacon of hope for all of us. Let us all work towards keeping this hope alive.
I think it's one of the most honorable and difficult speeches I would ever have to read in my life. So, it is a great honor and a wonderful surprise to receive this award from the Vaclav Havel Library Foundation. As for me, it was also a surprise that in August of 2020 I found myself in a human ocean of shock, and solidarity of Belarusians. The surprise was twofold. First, because hundreds of Belarusian citizens came out of their homes into the streets of towns and villages to express the thirst for new life, for their artistic creativity and the ability of self-organize. Second, I surprised myself. I surprised myself because of my own voice, which suddenly became one of many in this immense national force responding on a daily basis to the pain and hope of rapidly developing events. As an artist, I immediately felt the new acoustics of Belarusian space and the worldwide response to the dramatic actions that unfolded in my country. News sites were full of photos from Belarusian civil actions and texts, including my colleagues, that were immediately translated into so many languages. And here it is important to say that it was not the excitement of sport fans who were carried away by spectacular sacrifice. We felt and still feel the compassion and genuine support of our brothers and sisters worldwide. Today, everyone knows the shocking facts of the brutal suppression of Belarusian protests, physical violence, murder and torture, persecution of activists, crushing of non-governmental organizations, including SME, more than 600 political prisoners, among those who fell under brutal and violent repressions, also humanitarians, people of creative professions, musician Maria Kolesnikova, artist Alice Pushkin, philosopher Vladimir Matskevich, and many, many, many others. We believe in our victory. We know that we who are creating change are the majority. But we also know that new, difficult tests are still ahead of us. Unfortunately, the dictatorship of 21st century demonstrates high stability during this time of globalization. They are benefiting from global cooperation and even receive immense grants from their ideological opponents. The Belarusian police cars are armed by Europeans, and Americans equip the special services. The Belarusian civilians, the Belarusian people have no effective means for military confrontation. Belarusians at this time have chosen the path of peaceful resistance, where the main force is new ethical solidarity over ethnic, religion, and party differences. This choice is a great test. Despite the repressive actions, of course, we must preserve our integrity. Divided in the undergrounds and prisons and in exile. We must not lose each other, not lose a living and active connection with each other. And here, we will definitely need the experience of an uncompromising dissident of the 20th centuries, such as Havel, and the help of modern, creative individuals and intellectuals who are ready to share the surprises and hopes of rebellion Belarusians. Thank you.
But how long is it since you went out?
I don't know, ages?
You don't go out at all then?
No,
How much do you drink?
the same as everyone else,
Starting in the morning?
as the case may be.
How you sleep?
It varies.
Ever dream about them? Or dream that you're already there?
Sometimes,
No, therefore,
yes.
you don't doubt, do you, that we all like you?
I know.
That vitamins?
Yes.
Apart from the vitamins, are you on anything else?
Not really. Why do you ask?
There's some talk.
What sort of talk?
Forget it. You know, quite a few people complain that you never answer letters.
I was never much of a letter writer.
Well, there's no law about it. Still, it's a pity that it lends support to the rumors
What rumors?
that you're no longer reliable, sir.
I replied to anything important. Perhaps something got lost in the post somewhere.
Leopold,
Yes.
you don't doubt, do you, that we all like you?
I know.
It goes without saying, it's your own business.
What is?
You don't have to count to me.
What?
I'm asking as a friend.
I know.
Is it true you say enlisted?
It's not that simple.
And how are things between you and Susanna?
We get along.
Leopold,
Yes.
you don't doubt, do you, that we all like you?
I know.
It's terrible, of course, to live with this nerve-wracking uncertainty. We all understand that. None of us knows how we stand it ourselves. You have to understand that.
I do understand.
I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm really here on behalf of everyone.
Who's everyone?
Your friends,
Are you an emissary?
if you want to call it that.
And what are you concerned about specifically?
How should I put it? I mean, simply, there's growing circumstantial evidence giving rise to certain speculation.
What circumstantial evidence? What speculation?
Look, your friends! And I won't deny, I include myself. We've all, for some time, and let's hope our fears are groundless, we've all, for some time, begun to question whether you might not crack under the strain, whether you'll be able to meet all the claims which, thanks to all you've done already, the claims which are made on you, that you'll be able to fulfill the expectations which, forgive me, are rightly expected of you. If you'll be, in short, up to your mission, which is to do justice to those great obligations, to the truth, to the world, to everyone whom you set an example for. You're not angry, are you? I mean, that I'm speaking so openly.
No, on the contrary.
It's terrible, of course, to live with this nerve-wracking uncertainty. We all understand that. None of us knows how we stand it ourselves. You have to understand.
I do understand.
The more they count on you, the harder it would be for them if you failed to hold out in some way.
Well, people are calling on me all the time. Not long ago, a couple of lads from the paper mill showed up. Typical workers, like ordinary people.
That's certainly excellent, but I don't know, how should I put it?
What?
How should I put it?
How should you put what?
The question is whether a visit from a couple of paper mill workers, excellent though it is in itself, is simply, or might become simply, forgive me, a kind of inaction in action, a leftover from a world which is no longer the case, whether you might not be playing the role in a mechanical, superficial way, to reassure yourself that you are still the person to whom that role properly belonged. What is at stake here is that a gap should not open up between you and your role in society, so that your role, which was a true reflection of your personality, becomes a crutch to prop you up. Circumstantial evidence of a supposed continuity of personality, but spurious, illusory, self-deceiving, by means of which you try to assure the world and yourself that you are still the person who you, in fact, no longer are. You're not angry, are you? But I'm speaking so openly.
No, on the contrary.
It's terrible, of course, to live with this nerve-wracking uncertainty. We all understand that. None of us knows how we'd be able to stand it ourselves. You have to understand that.
I do understand.
And even if this danger, which we, your friends, worry about, is infinitesimal, I have a duty to you, to myself, to all of us, to confess these worries to you. But all that said, I can't escape the awful feeling that lately something inside you has begun to collapse, as if an axis that has held you together has given way, as if the ground is collapsing under your feet, as if you've gone lame inside, that you are tending more and more to act the part of yourself instead of being yourself. Your personal life, that vital link is, don't be angry, in a mess. You're lacking a fixed point out of which everything inside you would grow and develop. You're losing the strength and perhaps even the will to put your affairs in order. You're erratic. What happened to your perspective on things? To your humor, your industry, your persistence, the pointedness of your observations, your irony and self-irony, your capacity for enthusiasm, for emotional involvement, for commitment, even for sacrifice. Leopold!
Yes?
Yes, of course. Forgive me. I'm sorry. You don't doubt, do you? That we all like you?
I know.
So I beg you, be again that brilliant Leopold Nevels, whom everybody held on high.
That
Lucy.
can't you see he's cold?
You know, he never mentioned it.
Also, it's late.
Yeah, of course. Forgive me. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I'm just going.
Cheerio, do come again sometime.
But
You didn't have to push it out like that.
You would have been sitting here all night, and what I want you for myself. We get so little time.
It's not that.
Why do you treat me like a stranger in front of other people?
I don't, do I?
That's not what I meant. And if we're going to talk about it, then there's other reasons behind it.
Such as?
You're simply blocked. You're censoring yourself, you're afraid to get into any emotion or experience, you're controlling, observing, watching yourself every minute, you're thinking about it, so in the end it's duty instead of pleasure. And of course, it doesn't work, but that's my problem. I wasn't going to talk about it now.
About what then?
Everything I've done for us. I've done freely and willingly. I'm not complaining and I don't want anything in return. I only want you to admit what is true.
What do you mean?
We are seeing each other. We're lovers. We love each other.
Have I ever denied it?
You do everything you can to deny it, to make it invisible, to avoid acknowledging it. You behave as if it wasn't there.
I'm possibly more reserved about some things than I should be, but forgive me, you're partly to blame.
Me? How?
Your ceaseless effort to give a name to our relationship, to make your status somehow official, and the way you defend your territory while quietly and relentlessly trying to enlarge it. The way that you have to discuss it endlessly.
But I ask so little of you. You must see that I live only for you and through you, and all I want is for you you to admit to yourself that you love me. And I believe you do love me. I don't believe that you're incapable of love. Without love, no one is a complete person. We only achieve an identity through the person next to us. Isn't that how you put it in your ontology of the human self?
You know, you deserve someone better. I'm just worthless.
I don't like you talking about yourself like that.
No, it's true, Lucy. I can't get rid of the awful feeling that lately something has begun to collapse inside me. As if some access which was holding me together has broken, the ground collapsing under my feet. As if I've gone lame inside. I sometimes have the feeling that I'm acting the part of myself instead of being myself. I'm lacking a fixed point of which I can grow and develop. I'm erratic. What happened to me, what happened to my perspective on things, my humor, my industry and persistence, the pointedness of my observations, my irony and self-irony, my capacity for enthusiasm, for emotional involvement, for commitment, even for sacrifice. Lucy. Oh, what's the matter?
You're a worse case than I thought.
How do you mean?
All this talk, it's nothing but excuses. You sang a different tune the first time you got me to stay with you. You said our relationship would give you back some of your lost integrity, that it would renew your hope, that it would put you back together emotionally, that it would open the door into a new life. You just say what suits you.
You're being unfair, Lucy. I really am going through a crisis. Even Bertrand says so.
Ah, please don't go on. There is no point. I'm going to get dressed.
No, don't be silly, Lucy. This is no way to part. It's them.
What are we going to do?
I don't know. Go in the bedroom. I'll let them in.
No, I'm staying with you.
Good evening, Professor.
Good evening.
I suppose you know who we are.
I suppose so.
You thought we wouldn't come anymore today, did you?
I realize you can come at any
We
time.
must apologize for the intrusion. You obviously had other plans for the evening.
What plans I had is my own
It's a
business.
pleasure to meet you. According to our colleagues, you're a sensible chap, so with luck we'll come to an understanding.
I don't know what there is to understand. I've got my things ready. I just need time to get dressed.
What's the hurry? It may not come to the worst.
But we must ask the lady to kindly leave.
I'm staying.
No, you're leaving.
You bastard!
Don't touch her!
Now that wasn't necessary, was it?
You don't have to worry about your girlfriend. Nobody's going to harm her. As soon as she comes to her senses, we'll take her home.
We're not inhuman, you can be sure of that. Do you mind if we sit down, too?
Miss Susanna isn't at home then?
We know she's innocent. What are you writing at the moment? Anyone ask?
What does it matter?
No harm in asking.
When was the last time you went out?
I don't know.
It was some time ago, wasn't it? Vitamins?
Yes.
Apart from vitamins, are you on anything?
Not really. Why?
There's been some talk.
What sort of talk?
How much do you drink?
The same as everyone else.
Start in the morning?
As the case may be.
Well, look, Professor, we won't drag this out unnecessarily. We're here because we've been given the job of putting a proposition to you.
A proposition?
Yes. As you know only too well, you're being threatened with something unpleasant, which I personally wouldn't wish upon you, and I don't suppose you were particularly looking forward to it yourself.
In a way, it might be better
As you've been told many times before, it's not our business to push these things to extremes. On the contrary, we want to avoid confrontation so that, if possible, things don't come to the worst.
It's not in our interest.
And that's why we're here. We've been given the job of notifying you that under certain conditions, this whole matter could be dropped.
Dropped? How?
As you know, what's coming to you is coming to you because under the name of Professor Leopold Nerels, you put together a certain paper.
An essay, as you call
You
it.
never denied it. And in effect, therefore, you brought the whole thing upon yourself. By this act of non-denial, you unmasked the perpetrator.
As a man of wide knowledge, you must be aware that if the perpetrator isn't known, one cannot proceed against him. This is known as the principle of the identity of the perpetrator.
In a word, if you would cite here and now a short statement saying that you are not Professor Leopold Nettles, author of the paper in question, then the whole thing would be considered null and void and all previous decisions rescinded.
If I understand you correctly, you want me to declare that I am no longer me.
Well, that's a way of putting it, which might do for a philosopher, but of course from a legal point of view, it doesn't make sense. Obviously, it's not a matter of you declaring that you are no longer you, but only declaring that you are not the same person who is the author of that thing. Essentially, it's a formality.
One name being like another name.
Do you mean that I have to change my name?
Not at all. You can have whatever name you like. That's entirely up to you. Nobody, at least in this instance, could care less. The only thing which is important here is whether you are or are not the Nettles who wrote that paper.
If you insist on keeping your name for sentimental reasons, then by all means.
Though there's no denying that it would be neater if you were to decide otherwise.
In other words, it's not so much a question of whether you are Nettles or Nichols, but rather whether you are the Nettles who wrote the paper.
You have to admit it's a good offer.
I don't understand what you'll achieve by it, or why, in that case, you're even proposing it. As far as I know, you never do anything without a reason.
Our interest is to wipe this unpleasant business off the slate and give you one more chance.
What chance?
To keep out of trouble. Until the next time.
I don't like it much.
Now look, whether you like it or not is your own affair. Nobody is forcing you to do anything, and nobody can force you. But I'm telling you, man to man, that you'd be making a mistake if you didn't go along.
It's a free gift.
Our ambassador to the UN is Schapiro. So thank you for coming. It's exciting to see all these people here, and I know you came because of the auction specifically. Right? And I'll keep the auction very quick so that we can unlock the doors and you can go. So we just have to raise some funds. But before I start, Andy started it, but I would like to tell you that every organization has its own soul, its own heart, brain, etc. And in our group, that core is called Pavla Niklova. And again, Andy started it, but on behalf of all my colleagues of our group, BBLA, Advanced Level Library Foundation, I would like to acknowledge and thank Pavla for all her work, because all these programs and everything is coming from her. So we'll start very quickly. Our quick auction, basically, the reason of this auction is we would like to support this program that started in 2014. And the program supports this competition of American and Czech undergraduate students who write these mini drama stories based on Havel's work. And again, we really dealt already with over 100 students already, right? And so we are trying to raise $4,800 tonight. Let's make it $5,000. And again, we have well-trained pickpockets. Where are my assistants? Raise your hands. So when we go over that, then when we go item by item, we can look at it. You actually have this piece of paper on your table. Auction items are mixed green salad, duck confit. Oh, sorry. So Pavla will tell you about these individual things, and I will make it simple for you. We need to raise $5,000, but I will match every single penny up to $2,500. So essentially, from this group, I just need to raise $2,500, and I'm matching the rest of it.
Joseph, I would like to thank you very much for your kind words, and I have to say it's been an honor to work for an organization that cares about the legacy of one of the biggest thinkers and philosophers and artists, writers of the 20th century, Václav Havel. I'm really honored, and I would like to thank you for coming and for supporting us. Thank you very much. I also would like to thank Christine and Michael and all the actors. All of them. All of them keep saying we love and admire Tom so much, and so that's what makes this evening so special. And we are really grateful that you are here and that you are adding this artistic part to our evening. Thank you so much.
And I have no idea how much money we raised, but I promise I will match all the way up to $5,000. So thank you very much. And right now, it is my privilege to invite the Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs to say a couple of words. He practiced actually at the UN already. And
Dobrý večer. But I'm going to switch to English. Dear friends, dear guests, and I'm really happy to see some familiar faces. Really makes me happy. But first of all, I just want to apologize for being late to this gala dinner. I was stuck at the UN General Assembly. That took a bit longer, but I'm happy to be here with you. It's become a tradition that come autumn, the Bohemian Benevolent and Literary Association and the Václav Havel Library Foundation organize this wonderful gala evening. I'm very much grateful for this chance to meet, and I personally am deeply moved and honored to be here in the famed Bohemian National Hall. And there is a reason to celebrate, indeed. This year it is the 130th anniversary of the Bohemian Benevolent and Literary Association's existence. A few years, after 1891, the year of BBLA inception, contributions from Czech immigrants helped build this splendid hall. That goes for another. But the BBLA of today truly represents cultural and historical traditions, not only of the Czechs, but of other Central Europeans here in Manhattan. So warmest congratulations, and we'll have a chance to talk and celebrate later. But ladies and gentlemen, and granted I'm not reading you the UN speech, but please bear with me for a bit longer. It's been 10 years since the passing of our former president, Václav Havel. The life and work of Václav Havel is indeed a true inspiration to all of us. His legacy has become a strong part of our foreign policy. For more than 30 years already, the Czech Republic has supported and has tried to give voice to those who have experienced the same hardship and aspire for the same liberties as we once did. And indeed, we put our money where our mouth is. The Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs spends nearly 100 million Czech crowns annually on human rights and democracy projects. And it is the second organizer of this evening, the Václav Havel Library, which can be credited with preserving and maintaining the legacy of the former president. We are deeply grateful for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to see that many friends of Václav Havel, and I hope they are really here, and I have it in my, I have it written down here, but I haven't had a chance to look, but I hope that Sir Tom Stoppard is here, and I'm making it. Yes, okay, lovely.
In spirit.
Yeah, in spirit. And along with them, it is deeply humbling a moment for me that tonight we can recognize this year's prize winner, the poet from Minsk, Mr. Dmitry Stolzev. He embodies the qualities we were used to finding in the dissidents of Czechoslovakia: courage and poetry. And it is on this particular note that I'm delighted to conclude my remarks. The enduring bond between the Czech Republic and the United States gets ever so stronger by our joint and unwavering support for freedom and human rights. Thank you, and please enjoy this evening.
Rock and Roll, played by Sir Tom Stoppard, revisits some of the horrors of communist oppression in Czechoslovakia, the irony of pro-Marxism in the West, and the incredible role that music played in opening up Czech society throughout the 1970s, 80s, and ending with a Rolling Stones concert in 1990 that some of you must have attended in real life. To give you a scenario, in this scene, Max, an Englishman, visits his old friend and student, Jan, who has now returned to Czechoslovakia and is living as a political dissident in the days after the Soviet-crushing Prague Spring. So let us give our attention once more to some live actors in this scene from Tom Stoppard's Rock and Roll.
It started late, and anyway, here I am. How are you? Oh, you should have waited inside. Is it warm enough? I went to a lecture on Andy Warhol. Well, to be frank, the lecture was illustrated, you might say, with rock and roll. How was the anniversary thing?
Somebody giving a speech for the so many years
Of what?
I forget. I didn't go. With these jamborees, if you want to know the score, it's best to skip the official program.
So now you know the score.
Yes. You look all right, but you're not teaching anymore.
No.
Serves you right. How do you illustrate a lecture on Andy Warhol with rock and roll?
It's a little complicated, but there's this band I like, the Plastic People of the Universe, and last year they lost their professional license, Undesirable Elements, you know.
Undesirable how?
The songs are morbid, they dress weird, they look like they're on drugs, and one time they sacrificed a chicken on stage. But otherwise, it's a mystery. So now it's illegal for them to make a living from concert bookings, but Jiroš, he's like their artistic director, he's legally an art historian, so he booked the Music F Club for a lecture on Andy Warhol, but illustrated. Thank you for, finding me.
I promised Esme.
Oh, thank you. And Eleanor, is she,
She's doing fine. Glasses?
Good. Please tell her from my heart and to Esme also. How is it?
19 and pregnant and living in a commune.
Oh, but a communist.
Yes, we've done that one. She's trying to persuade Eleanor to live on wild garlic. School.
School? Why?
The cancer came back.
Fuck, I'm so...
Yes.
Is she,
Still teaching, throwing up and bald as a coot, but you know Eleanor.
Yes. Bold as a coot?
Not bold. Bald. She's lost all her hair.
Yeah.
And you still got work at the paper?
Technically, yes, but now I work in the kitchens.
Cusack certainly made a fool of you.
Well, I was an optimist for 9 months. It was great. I had my own column.
Column about what?
Anything I liked. It was a question of which way to be useful. It's not useful to be a critic of what is over and done, and so I am a critic of the future. It was my socialist right, but when I refused to sign the loyalty pledge, I was purged into the kitchen. Kitchen porter. That was some purge, eh? 1,200 scientists, 800 university professors?
900.
Ah, the score. Also, half my fellow journalists. Self-censorship about the Russian occupation didn't save us. Loyalty meant kissing their Soviet asses. I would have tried to emigrate, but...
What? But what? You would have emigrated, but what?
Yes, I was offered a job in Frankfurt, but I don't know, German rock bands.
I've never heard anything so pathetic. Do everybody a favor and go live in the West. It's where you belong, you bedwetter. If it wasn't for 11 million Soviet military dead, your little country would be a German province now. And you wouldn't be bellyaching about your socialist right to piss everywhere except in the toilet. It'd be smoke up the chimney. I'm exactly as old as the October Revolution. I grew up with the fight against fascism. In the slums, in Spain, the Arctic convoys. And today, on a urinal wall, I saw where someone had scrawled a hammer and sickle and a swastika joined by an equal sign. If I'd caught who did that, I'd probably have killed him. And Esme thinks a fascist is a mounted policeman at a demo in Grosvenor Square. So, there's something which keeps happening to me. More and more now that I'm getting to be half famous for not leaving the Communist Party, I meet somebody. It could be a visiting professor or somebody fixing my car or anyone. But what they all want to know, but they don't know how to ask because they don't want to be rude, is how come? When it's obvious even to them, how come I don't get it? And it's the same here. I meet some apparatchik working the system, and he's fascinated by me. He's never met a communist before. I'm like the last white rhino. Why don't I get it?
So why don't you?
Don't push it. A worker state fits the case. What else but work lifts us out of the slime? Work does all the work. What the hell else?
How about ballet?
From each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. What could be more simple, more rational, more beautiful. It was the right idea in the wrong conditions for 50 years and counting. A blip. Christ, we waited long enough for someone to have it.
A blip. Stalin killed more Russians than Hitler. Perhaps we aren't good enough for this beautiful idea. This is the best that we can do it with. Marx knew we couldn't be trusted. First the dictatorship, till we learn to be good. Then the utopia where a man can be a baker in the morning, a lawmaker in the afternoon, and a poet in the evening. But we never learn to be good. So look at us. You know, a one-legged man showed up at my school once. He waited outside the classroom, and it turned out that the man with the one leg had come to say goodbye to our teacher. Afterward, the teacher explained to us that his friend lost his leg in the war. So as a special favor, he'd been given permission to go and live near his sister somewhere in North Bohemia. You see, our teacher said, how communism looks after its war heroes. So I put my hand up. God, I must have been stupid. I really thought it would be interesting for them. So I said, you know, in England, anyone could live anywhere they like, even if they had two legs. My mother was questioned, and she lost her job at the shoe factory. But the point is, the other kids in the class, they thought I was telling travelers' tales. They couldn't grasp the idea of a country where someone, anyone, could decide to move to another town and just go there. Suppose everyone wanted to live in Bohemia when their job is in Moravia. How would such a society work?
And you didn't explain?
Explain what?
How it works. How everyone's free to have lunch at the Ritz, and it's absolutely legal to be unemployed.
Your problems are yours. You fix them, okay? I love England. I would like to live forever in my last English schoolboy summer. It was exceptional, you know. 1947, endless summer days. I collected birds' eggs, and in the evenings, so long you couldn't sleep for the light, listening to the farmer's boy calling the cattle home. And in the winter was amazing that year. A Christmas card winter. And my mother knew all the songs. She loved Svechnikova, Bushka for my friends, and sang, "We'll meet again," in a terrible accent over the wash. I was happy.
Jesus Christ.
If I was English, I wouldn't care if communism in Czechoslovakia reformed itself into a pile of pig shit. To be English would be my luck. I would be moderately enthusiastic, moderately Philistine, and a good sport. I would be kind to foreigners in a moderately superior way. And also to animals, except for the ones I kill, I would live a decent life, like most English people. Max, how many voted for the party?
About 0.2%. It's called the parliamentary route to government.
You got the strange God's vote. Marxism, fascism, anarchism, kept on the side of the plate like a little bit of salt to bring out flavor of English moderation. 1,000 years of knowing who you are gives a people confidence in its judgment. Words mean what they always meant. With us, words change meaning to make the theory fit the practice. We eat salt? Come on in, Max. Give me your plate. Give me your place. Because I dream of having what you invented, trial by jury, independent judges. You can call the government fools and criminals, but the law is for free speech. The same for the highest and the same for the lowest. The law makes freedom normal. The denial of freedom must prove its case. And if the government doesn't like it, tough shit. They can't touch you. The law is constant. And yet, what you have your set. what you have set your heart on, Max, the only thing that will make you happy is that the workers own the means of production. You know, I would give it to you gladly if I could keep the rest.
What do you want it for?
To live free.
The little diddums! Still sucking on philosophy's tit. For you, freedom means leave me alone. For the workers, it means give me a break. Social relations are economic, as I thought we'd agreed at Cambridge. You, me, and Marx.
So, some sunny day.
So, at Cambridge, why were you pretending to be what you were not?
Dear friends and colleague of mine, a director and producer whose work you all know, Jack O'Brien, who is currently working on a new production, but he has directed many plays by William Shakespeare. He's directed Thornton Wilder, Lillian Hellman, Terrence McNally, Nora Ephron, and of course Tom Stoppard. In the case of Stoppard, he directed The Invention of Love and a little play called The Coast of Utopia, which came in at 9 hours over 3 performances at Lincoln Center. With all his awards and intimate knowledge of tonight's recipient of the Unparalleled Service Award from BBLA, Jack is the man for the job of introducing tonight's honoree, who will in turn receive the presentation from none other than Dagmar Havlova, the actor and wife of President Havel. The extraordinary actress Nicole Akhtar will be reading Dagmar's speech for you. May we have Jack?
Good evening. My name is Jack O'Brien, and I'm a theater director who has had the great good fortune over the last 10 or 15 years of directing some of Tom Stoppard's most glorious, most challenging pieces. To me, the arts is a world apart, a planet all its own in which it's possible for people who otherwise would never have known each other to exist, to create, to relate, to collaborate, to educate. The path that brought me from the state of Michigan into the world of Tom's is the same path that allowed Stoppard to align with his compatriot, Havel. Without the arts, without the provocation of creating something together, interpreting something together, reaching across to share something together, none of us would ever have known each other. I have no intention of cataloging Stoppard's works here at the moment. They're very well known, and many of you may know them better than I. But I'm very sad not to be able to be with you tonight to express my affection, my gratitude over the possibility that led me into those remarkable works and proximity with this remarkable man. The fact that we cannot be here tonight, neither Tom nor me, speaks ill of the world in which we live and a great deal toward the ties that bind. He's an amazing font of delight, education, amusement, insight, refinement. That he has chosen to choose the theater as his métier, is another of those unbelievably miraculous chances that allowed me to be with you tonight. So, regrettably in two dimensions, but with a heart filled with gratitude and excitement, it is my great honor to present to you the internationally famous and unmistakably original Tom Stoppard.
Distinguished guests, dear friends, it is an absolute privilege for me to be given the task to honor the recipient of the 2021 Bohemian, Benevolent and Literary Association Award for Unparalleled Service to the Czech and Slovak Communities. It makes me very sad that I cannot do so in person. I would dearly like to congratulate and thank the man who will be given this award face to face for everything he has done for Czechs and Slovaks, and I would dearly like to embrace him and shake his hand. The list of everything that Sir Tom Stoppard did for us in the communist Czechoslovakia is endless. Against the wills of totalitarianism, he befriended many Czech dissidents and always supported them over the years. He and my husband had an ardent and enduring friendship. They understood each other, and they always engaged each other in everlasting discussions about politics, society, literature, and theater. They were connected by an unwavering respect for the values of human rights, democracy, and freedom. Václav often talked about Tom and would always emphasize how much strength he drew from Tom's moral support during difficult times. A support that Tom demonstrated through newspaper articles and a tireless stirring of debates about the situation in the Eastern Bloc. When I met Tom myself, I was enchanted by his charm and courtesy, as well as his genuine enthusiasm for justice. He is a shrewd observer and a vigilant ally. He has proven many times just how much he cares about the state of affairs in our country. Dear Tom Stoppard, please symbolically accept the award from my hands, as well as my firm embrace. You deserve our deepest gratitude, and you will always be acknowledged and remembered for your many merits in our country's history.
Thank you so much, my dear Dagmar Havlova. And as you see, here it is. We are not just like the future, we're living in the future, aren't we? Here we are, scattered over half the map of the globe, and almost in real time. And it brings us up to the minute. Thank you very, very much for your generous words about me. I hope, like most people who receive awards, I feel a little rewarded beyond my deserts, but I'm going to take it and keep it, and I shall be very, very proud of it. I actually first heard Václav's name in 1966. It was mentioned to me by Kenneth Tynan of the National Theatre. So my first relationship with Havel was as a fan, and I just loved the early plays that Tynan gave me to read. The Memorandum, The Garden Party. There was one called The Conspirators. And it's a long time before, first of all, he started writing essays in earnest and over a period. And he'd been in jail by the time I actually read the collection properly. So I met him properly then in 1977 when I went to Prague. And you can imagine the effect he had on me, and the effect just being in his presence had on me. He was the most enchanting man, as well as being very brilliant. And above all, he was a true philosopher. In fact, roll on to 1984, and I had the privilege of standing in for him when he got an honorary doctorate at Toulouse University in France. He asked me to read his acceptance speech, which I did. And in fact, it's in this book here, and I brought it actually with me. And here is my bookmark to help me find the place. See? I love that picture of him. And this is how this speech of Václav's ended up. He said, "Does not the perspective of a better future depend on something like an international community which, ignoring state boundaries, political systems, and power blocks, standing outside the high game of traditional politics, aspiring no titles and appointments, would seek to make a real political force out of a phenomenon so ridiculed by the technicians of power, the phenomenon of human conscience." Was there ever a national leader who spoke like that, even thought like that? It almost brings me to tears to stand here receiving something so beautiful given in his name. I'm deeply grateful, and I keep thinking about the phrase he made famous, living in truth. Has there ever been a time where that phrase resonates more than it does today? It's a privilege to be with you. Thank you so much, Dasha. Thank you, Christine, if you're there. I think you're officiating. You'll see that I managed to change the weather as well as my clothes slightly. And I'm still here with you all as far as the modern world has allowed me to be. Thank you.
Two great men who are friends. I have to just say on a personal note, I go to a lot of award shows. Sometimes I'm nominated and I go to a lot of events. But this one was very moving and very meaningful and really about something very important. And honoring two really serious thinkers. We don't have enough serious thinkers now, do we? So thank you for having me. And it's my job to tell you to continue eating dessert. But thank you for supporting, your generosity in supporting this fearless legacy of one of the most important 20th century thinkers. An additional thanks to all the actors, the wonderful actors who came out. Our evening's director, Michael Sexton, the kitchen and wait staff. Our graphic artists, board members, everyone who helped to make this evening possible. We look forward to yet another year of defining and sharing Havel's lessons for a new millennium. I so enjoyed being with you. Dziękuję bardzo. Dobranoc.